Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and KCUR. It's Tuesday, March 24th, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. On today's show, we look ahead to a couple of big events, the NCAA Tournament Sweet 16 and Major League Baseball's opening day, and we're 1 for 2 when it comes to following our teams. The Royals open season number 58 on Friday when they visit the Atlanta Braves. Beat writer Jaylon Thompson will tell us about the team's final roster decisions and the impact of the recent World Baseball Classic on the Royals. But first, we're talking college hoops with columnist Sam McDowell. He covered Kansas in the early rounds of the NCAA Tournament, and it ended in heartbreak for KU with a buzzer-beating loss to St. John's in the second round. The bigger news was made after that game when Coach Bill Self, who has experienced health problems for the past 4 years, announced he was unsure about his return to the bench next season. Sam and I discuss what this means to the program going forward. And afterwards, I'll tell you what's on my radar in Kansas City sports this week. Hello, Sam.
Hey, how's it going, Blair?
It's going great. For us, not so much for the Jayhawks. Tough loss to St. John's in the second round of the NCAA tournament. You know, it just seemed like Kansas played so poorly for a long time, played great for the final 8 minutes, and then lapsed defensively at the end. So there's kind of multiple heartbreaking moments for KU, wasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, this team for the last 4 weeks couldn't get anything out of its non-Darren Peterson players. I mean, all year long, this was a team that was waiting on Darren Peterson to get on the floor. And then once he was on the floor, it was, okay, but just wait till he's fully healthy. Well, he's felt as good as he has all year. And somehow his presence stifled the ability of everyone else to contribute the way they were contributing before he was in the lineup. Melvin Council was 12 of 50 over his last 4 games. Flory Badinga didn't top 14 points for 8 straight games. Trey White was non-existent yesterday. And, Bryson Tiller gave him a literal goose egg in the lineup. And the rest of the lineup, Blair, here in San Diego, went almost a full 20 minutes with 1 bucket when you date back to the last 10 minutes of the Cal Baptist game, in which the last 9:56 of that game, they got 1 bucket, which was when Cal Baptist decided the game was over with 13 seconds left. Trey White dunked it. The first non-Darren Peterson bucket against St. John's in the second round was Elmarco Jackson's second attempt at a dunk with 10:13 left. And that's the separation between non-Darren Peterson buckets. And for whatever reason, that became the story of KU's season, even though they played without this guy so well. And then suddenly when he was there, those guys just gave him nothing.
And yet here they were, had fought back valiantly, really.
Had a chance to win the game.
Yeah, had a chance to at least send the game into overtime, right? And with a chance to win it. And then defensively, they just misplay the final 4 seconds where St. John's takes it to the basket. I thought they started misplaying that possession much earlier when I think St. John's got the ball back with about 13 seconds to go. Kansas had 4 fouls to give. And instead of spacing those fouls out where St. John's wouldn't even have had a chance to get a shot off, Kansas fouled so quickly for the first couple that it left St. John's with enough time to get off the game-winning shot.
Yeah, 100%. Now, you do have to play a fine balance there because you want them to continue to throw the ball in under their own basket. And so
you want them to throw it into the backcourt. You want them to have to travel to, get enough distance to get to the basket.
Exactly. So I think, because of that, they were a little careful about fouling quickly to ensure that they were still taking the ball under their own basket and had to go 94 feet. But the beauty of these NCAA tournaments, as you know, Blair, because you've been to, 10 times as many as I have, is you do get to sit courtside with the media and you do get to hear the game in a different way. And it was after their, the first foul, I thought they just should have tried to trap, make the refs call the foul, just play tough defense and more physical defense and make the refs call it and see if you can't get a steal.
Right. Get a steal.
Right.
Get a layup. Yeah. Win the game.
but Cole Rosario almost fouled intentionally there, and then they get the ball to Zuby Ejiofor, their 5-man, and Trey White just wraps up his waist and intentionally fouls. And this is the part where I'm saying the relevance of my seat, because you could hear Bill Self yell across the court, Trey, make him take some time. But at this point, now there's 4 fouls. They've only got 2 fouls left. And I thought that they should have left it at 5 rather than giving them all the fouls to give, because Elmarco Jackson looked terrified of fouling on that drive. And if they had a foul to give, I think maybe he plays a little bit more physical defense, and because he's allowed to play a little bit more physical defense in that situation. So I totally agree with you. I think that last, I think it was 14.1 seconds. I think that sequence is going to haunt him, because the first 2 fouls, you don't have to foul just because you have fouls to give. There's a purpose in using them to eat up the time, and they didn't use the purpose of them.
For a program that has the Mario Chalmers buzzer beater to send it to, not buzzer beater, I guess, with 2 seconds to go, to send their 2008 championship game into overtime and eventually win it against Memphis. They got the big bucket from David McCormick in 2022, that 2 of them really, to give the Jayhawks a lead and then give them a 3-point advantage with his little baby jump hooks. Kansas has had some big shots in the NCAA tournament. Not many have gone against them, but this one will live with KU fans, to live with in their nightmares, to have a St. John's win at the buzzer. But there was more news made after the game when Bill Self was asked, and you had the follow-up questions about his future, and it's not 100% certain that Self will be back as the KU coach next year. Take us through the press conference and what you made of Bill Self's comments.
Yeah, I mean, this too, Blair. I mean, Bill Self is careful with how he phrases things. I mean, he almost never seems to misstep in the way he wants a message to be received. And so I was surprised because of that when it was just a local student reporter was first to the mic and asked him about his future. And he said he'd get back with his family and talk about it. And because of my surprise, that's why I asked the follow-up question. I said, I just want to make sure we're all interpreting this correctly. You haven't decided whether or not you're coaching next year. And he said, no, I haven't decided yet. And that's why I point out that Bill Self is careful with his words, because this isn't an accident that he's putting doubt out there about his future. And I think there's been doubt all season about whether or not Bill Self will be back. We all know the health issues that he's experienced. And that's what he referenced in his answer. He said, I love what I do. I'd like to feel good while I'm doing it, though. And, I mean, we were sitting at the Big 12 tournament and noticed that maybe he wasn't screaming quite as frequently during those couple games. I thought the same thing here at the NCAA tournament. I wonder if that's what he meant when he said, I'd like to feel good while doing it. Of course, that's, not anything that he's confirmed, but I just point that out to say that I think Bill Self wants to just feel like he can give everything he can if he's going to coach the team. And that's the conversations I think that he's going to have with his family, but also something that he ultimately is going to have to decide for himself. How much can he give if he does return?
If he doesn't return, it would be, Kansas hasn't had to deal with this for what,
quarter century.
Yeah, exactly. 2003 was when Rory Williams left for North Carolina and Bill Self took over, coming over from Illinois. But if Kansas turned to its bench to look for a new coach, you've got Jeremy Case as the associate head coach. Joe Dooley's an assistant coach. He's been a head coach for several years at a couple of programs. Doc Sadler is the senior advisor. He's been a head coach for 18 years. Jacques Vaughn, of course, an NBA coach for many years, including 6 years as a head coach. There would be options on the Kansas bench, but if we're looking at a program that would prefer to start anew, North Carolina's having those conversations right now as it's deciding whether Hubert Davis is going to be back. But do you have a sense or have a feeling of what Kansas might what might happen to Kansas if Bill Self leaves?
I think that would be dependent upon timing and other coach availability. I mean, the reality of this is one of the most important times of the college basketball season is immediately after your season ends. And you've got to get in the portal and build your roster for the next year. KU's roster is going to look a lot different than it did a year ago. And so, I mean, ideally, Bill Self makes a decision quickly, but you want him, I mean, he deserves the time to make this decision. And ideally, he makes it early. And then I think the search is nationwide, right? I mean, I think you've got a lot of candidates that should be intriguing to KU. How intriguing would KU be to them? I'm not sure. It's obviously a top job in the country, but that's not everything that people consider now. I mean, especially in the days of NIL, I think that's one of the first questions that comes up. And some of the guys that you might think be interested are having a lot of success at their own program. And so if he delays this decision and he takes a couple of weeks and then he might step away. You just mentioned North Carolina. Maybe they've also gotten into the market sooner, and that therefore they feel it was somebody who might have been interested in the job. I think the longer it takes, the more likely perhaps that you do have to look internally for that. But I think ideally you're a blue blood program that's been as successful as anybody for the last 23 years because of the guy who we're talking about. And therefore, I think it'd be a disservice not to look everywhere, anywhere and everywhere for anyone who might be interested.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, whoever is the coach next year, it's got a possible interesting roster composition. We know that Melvin Council and Trey White are gone. Their eligibility's been exhausted. Flory Badunga is going to have a decision to make whether he wants to stay at KU, try the NBA. It seems like everybody says after a crushing loss that, they all kind of say the right things about wanting to maybe give it another shot. But he has a decision to make. But others who could return,
or free agency too, Blair. I mean, he last year he kind of tested free agency.
That's exactly right.
So that's a new possibility these days as well.
So Elmarco Jackson can come back. Cole Rosario, Bryson Tiller, Paul Mbaya. I thought he had a nice tournament. He's had a nice run here. The big guy.
Jamari McDowell's the other one. Yeah,
Jamari McDowell's the other one. Right. They've got a heck of an incoming freshman class, guys who have already signed, including Talon Kinney, a top 15 scoring point guard, who I think would be the starting point guard for KU next year. And they're still involved with Tyron Stokes, the 6'7", kind of consensus number one freshman for next year. So, I mean, it could be a formidable roster. And we didn't even mention Darren Peterson. I think we're all convinced that he's going to.
Yeah, I mean, in the locker room yesterday, he mentioned that he hasn't decided yet, but I think we can make that decision for him. I mean, he's still, despite this turbulent year, is a projected number one pick, and if not number one, number two. So I don't know that he has much to gain by staying, other than maybe fulfilling this feeling. I'm sure this year feels unsatisfying to him, and not just because of the way it ended, but of course the way it unfolded.
So, okay, so interesting few weeks in front of KU now. Let's switch gears real quick. You couldn't watch the Missouri game because it played it went off exactly the same time as the first Kansas game. Missouri, of course, loses.
I had the iPad on.
Yeah, had the dual games going.
I did, yeah.
Missouri ends up losing to Miami by 14, but they led that game with 7.5 minutes to go. And then it just all collapsed on Dennis Gates and the Tigers. What a tough way to lose. I think a lot of us were kind of hopeful for Mizzou and thought they had a chance to win that game. But Miami was just the better team down the stretch, and it just fell apart for the Tigers.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it's fallen apart for them the last 3 years. I mean, they're 1-13 in March in the last 3 years, and
Oof.
I mean, it's the old saying, like one time happens, two could be a coincidence, but 3 times is a trend. I mean, this is something they've got to figure out, is why do their teams, as other teams are getting better late in the year, and this is the connection between Mizzou and KU this year, even though I think their teams were vastly different. The similarity is they were playing worse in March than they were in January and February. And so I can understand the frustration that's come from the fan base from Mizzou, because they felt like they perhaps had something decent going. And again, similar to KU, just way too dependent on one player. And it was entirely foreseeable that Miami's entire defensive game plan was going to be to remove Mark Mitchell from the game and make somebody else beat him. And to Jaden Stone's credit, played really well. But Jaden Stone's not a guy who I think is capable of, on his own, carrying a team to an NCAA tournament win. He needs some help. And I didn't think, the rest of the supporting cast did enough.
Yeah, Mark Mitchell was amazing down the stretch, and yet seems like when he had good games, nobody else from Missouri stepped up. A little bit Darren Peterson like, right?
Yeah.
But Missouri could not get that second, third, fourth score late in the season, and tough way to end the year for Mizzou. So we're down to the Sweet 16, and if you're looking for a KC-centric team to pull for down the stretch, look no further than the Iowa Hawkeyes.
That whole regional, Blair.
Yeah, there was a bunch of
you've got Keaton Wagler too for Illinois, Shawnee Mission Northwest. So yeah, and I think Kansas City has always had a little bit of the Nebraska flavor too.
For sure. And Big 8, Big 12 fans know Fred Hoiberg really well.
Some grads here. So yeah, I think that whole regional is this on to watch.
Yep. Very good.
Yeah. So that certainly interested in what Ben McCollum's done at Iowa has been remarkable, but those of us, you and me included, who saw what he was doing at Northwest, could not figure out why he did not get this opportunity earlier. And he gets 1 year at Drake, proves himself. Now he's gotten his first year at Iowa and already looks entirely capable of that job. And what's great, is that Bennett Sturts has been along for this whole ride from Northwest to Drake to Iowa. And Bennett Sturts has played himself into a late first round draft pick. And what was really impressive to me about that Iowa win is he couldn't hit shots, and they still beat the defending national champions and the number 1 seed.
0 for 9 from 3, and yet he had the big play at the end where he got the ball to the shooter that got him the game-winning three-pointer to beat top-seeded Florida. It was a great play, drawn up, unsurprisingly.
It was, and I was really fascinated by that play, first of all, because the throw in bounds does not come when he's moving back towards the inbounder, but rather after he's already completed that curl is when the pass comes to him, so that then he's moving with a head of steam when he first gets the ball and when he's dribbling. And I already was impressed by their timing of that because it seemed very intentional. But then you heard Todd Golden after the game say that their intention from Florida's side was to foul. Up 2, they wanted to foul because they feared exactly what happening. They thought if they fouled quickly, the worst that could happen is it's tied and you got a chance at a game-winning shot yourselves. And so I was really fascinated to hear that was a way of thinking. And it seemed like Ben McCollum thought they might do that because his whole entire play was to get Bennett Sturts loose and on the run with momentum to say, you can't catch up with them. And Bennett Sturts immediately finds the open pass. That's what makes him so great, is that he just seems to make the right basketball play so often.
Yeah, and you're right. That's why he's developed into an NBA prospect. So, all right, I wish KU and/or MU were playing on the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. They're not, but always a great conversation with Sam McDowell. Major League Baseball's opening day is this week. The first game's Wednesday with the Yankees playing the Giants, and there's several more games on Thursday, but the Royals don't open till Friday at the Atlanta Braves. Beat writer Jaylon Thompson is going to be there covering the action. Hello, Jaylon.
Hey, Blair, how you doing?
I'm good. Fun time, isn't it?
Yeah, the Royals are about to get it started. 2026, it seems like just yesterday they were walking off the field in Sacramento and going on for the offseason. We're right back at it now.
Gosh, that's right. I forgot that their season ended last year in Sacramento. So, um, uh, but before we look ahead, let's take a look back. There, at some recent history here. What happened at the World Baseball Classic? That was an amazing event, and the Royals were front and center with this. And not just one or two players, more than that, and even down into the minor leagues. I'm not sure the WBC can have an impact on on teams going forward, but at least it was just a nice couple of weeks for the Royals and players like especially Michael Garcia,
Hmm.
Salvador Perez, and Bobby Witt Jr. and Vinny Pasquantino. They all had their moments in the sun, didn't they? The last couple weeks.
Yeah, it felt like a introduction to the Kansas City Royals for people that haven't watched the Royals or knew anything about the Royals, knew where they played at or what stadium and their star guy. And if you only knew Bobby Witt Jr. before the World Baseball Classic, you pretty much know the stars of the Kansas City Royals now. And I think that's a good thing for the organization because you're able to showcase yourselves on a national stage. Like you said, Michael Garcia, not Michael. He cleared that up.
Yeah, that
It's
was. I'm
Michael
glad.
now.
I'm glad that got settled. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
but so we'll know for sure now.
We know for sure. People know who he is. He won the MVP of the World Baseball Classic, was really great. And, it's a continuation of what he did last year in 2025 breakout campaign. So good to see him continue to ride the wave of momentum into where he is as a star in this league or an emerging star in this league. We know about what Bobby Witt Jr. did defensive plays, didn't really perform to his best at the plate. But when they needed him in key moments defensively, he showed why he has a platinum gold glove in his trophy case. You saw Vinny Pasquantino set a record, 3 home runs. First player to ever do that in the WBC. That's incredible. Salvador Perez, just for him to bask in the glory of Venezuela winning and him being the captain and everything he's meant to the game of baseball, you see him on the highest stage. So I thought it was good for all the worlds, even Jack Caglione. We mentioned him too. He's probably going to be the one that need the World Baseball Classic the most because the Royals are going to count him a lot in 2026.
Absolutely, they are. He's your, as far as I know, and maybe you can persuade me otherwise. He's going to be the opening day right fielder for the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so, unless they opt to go with a righty against Chris Sale, who's left-handed. He's a dominant lefty. So, but I think you have to put Jack Caglione in the lineup day one. You just have to.
And speaking of the lineup, it looks like it's pretty set, right?
Mhm.
Except for that, who might be the opening day right fielder, but it looks like um, we've got our starting nine and DH for the Royals on opening day. I don't know if we need to go through that. I mean, there'll be a couple newcomers, right? With Isaac Collins in left, and
Mhm.
perhaps Starling Marte is the DH that day. But
Yeah.
whether he is or isn't, he's going to be on the field or in the lineup for the Royals. Um, but it seems like there are some roster decisions to be made down on the roster in the bullpen and then on the bench. Let's start with the position players. Who do you see, or what do you see as the tougher decisions that Matt Quatrero and JJ Picola have to make before the end of the week? I guess Wednesday, really. That's the
Yeah.
that's the day, right? Because as we mentioned, the first day of the season is Wednesday, and that's when you have to be at 26 for your roster.
Exactly. And I think Blair it comes down to simply is Michael Massey going to be healthy?
Hmm.
Is he healthy enough to be able to be on the field for the Royals and do everything they need him to do, which is play the outfield, play some second base, be that roving infielder, outfielder type that they need. And if for those that don't know, Michael Massey has a left calf strain, and he's been injury prone throughout his entire career. And this is something where he's played in minor league games, but he hasn't really run or opened up. And with a calf injury, you have to weigh, is it prudent enough to push it for the opening day, or do you allow him to start on the injured list and kind of backdate it a little bit so that he doesn't miss as much time as he probably would have on that 10-day? But it's going to come down to him. If he's healthy and ready to go, I think he takes one of the final spots. And then you're looking at either Nick Lofton or Tyler Tolbert both have two totally different games, right? Tyler Tober's a speed guy, late inning situation. Nick Lofton, utility guy, can play all over the field. But let's say that Massey is on the injury list and he can't go, or the Royals kind of protect him a little bit and allow him to just get fully healthy or so early in the season. That opens the door for Nick Lofton to make the team. That opens the door for even maybe Tyler Tober to make the team. Or do they decide they want to go with an NRI, a non-roster invitee? You have guys like Abraham Toro, who's had a great spring. He looked good for in the World Baseball Classic with Canada. You have a guy like Josh Rojas, same thing. These are MLB veterans. Kevin Newman, Brandon Drury. Do they decide to go with one of those guys to give that offensive punch that you can use off the bench versus the speed of element of Tyler Tolbert or the utility element of Nick Lofton? It depends on what they want to do. But if I'm sitting here today and I have Massey as healthy, I think Nick Lofton gets the last spot. But if Massey is on the injury list, I think it goes to Lofton and it goes to Tyler Tolbert. And I know we have Drew Waters, who's also out of options. That's going to be a tough decision. The Royals let him go. And to be honest with you, I think he's had his chance in Kansas City. He hasn't really grabbed it. And if you let him go and he gets claimed by another team, you might as well just live with that.
Yeah, yep, that's right, and I agree with you. He's had his opportunities here in Kansas City. So, okay, let's turn to pitching. The rotation is set, right? Cole Reagans is going to be the opening day starter, and is it going to be Lugo Waka the other two games in Atlanta, which means Chris Bubich will be the Royal starter for the home opener the following Monday against the Minnesota Twins, and then Noah Cameron would be the fifth starter. Um, so where does that place Bailey falter? What's his story?
Yeah, the Royals, they do not want to give up on a guy like Bailey Falter. They know what he can do, and to be honest, he really had a rough start when he came over last year from the Pittsburgh Pirates in the midseason trade. Comes over, his first matchup, I believe, was against the Boston Red Sox at Fenway Park. Not an easy task, right? And then from there, and he gets lit up and he gets lit up again, and then he goes to the bullpen and he just wasn't in the right space, as far as trying to deal with the trade, learn a new team, learn a new role. It just was a mess. And he comes back this spring. He's became a father. He had a new lease on life. He was in a good headspace. It just seemed like he was a different level pitcher. Just maybe a guy that can get back to what he was early in his career. And the Royals want to see that. And they're going to allow him possibly to do that as a swingman or a hybrid reliever, which means he can get some starts for you if you need him, or pitch multiple innings, piggyback role, whatever you need him to be in that bullpen. And if you look at the Royals schedule, they have 12 consecutive games after they get done with their Brave series where you have to run through the gauntlet, and it's Twins, Guardians. It's a lot, right? So you gotta be able to have that pitching to deal with the early part of the season in April where you're not gonna have an off day.
Yeah, it's a good point. When you don't have the off day, you can't finagle the pitching as much as maybe you'd like to. Um, the bullpen seems about set, but I wanted to ask you about a story that you wrote this week about Carlos Estevez and the a little bit lower on the velocity here in spring. How concerned are the Royals about this?
You know, listening to the Royals and talking to them and knowing how they like to operate, they're gonna trust Carlos Estevez. They're gonna trust him. But it's hard to look at those numbers and not have the alarm start sounding off in your head or want to press the panic button, because you need him to be at his best as a closer. And if you're tossing 88 to 90 miles per hour on average right now when the season's about to start, that's pretty much an issue, right? And, he led the league in saves in 2025. So you cannot take that away from him. He was an all-star in 2025. You can't take it away from him. When he gets in gear, he's ready to rock and roll. And he can be a guy that is arguably one of the best closers in the league, right? But you have to get to that point. And the Royals have to be comfortable allowing him to do his process of getting to that point. Let's not forget, he only pitched one time in the WBC for the Dominican Republic. He'd have a lot of opportunities to pitch live games and get himself right. So maybe he's still further behind from where he usually would be at this time. And the Royals have always said, well, he always starts slow. He's done it at every stop in his career. But Blair, we're at a point now where the Royals have a golden opportunity. The baseball guys are on their side to really start fast this year. And do you want to have that question mark of Carlos Estevez being at the back end where he might give up a game or two that you can win early? Because that was the difference in 2025. The Royals won 82 games, but they could have easily won 86 if they won those couple of games that went their way at the end of the night. So I think that that's why it's concerning.
Speaking of 82 wins, I was looking at some of the over-under totals for the Royals this season, and the consensus seems to be right around the same number. 82.5 is the most common figure I saw. That the bettors are saying the Royals at 82.5. That would be second in the AL Central. I think Detroit's at 85.5. But that puts them ahead of the Guardians, Twins, and White Sox. But it would keep them out of the playoffs. But I see a little bit better than an 82 win team here this year. Listen,
Mhm.
everybody's optimistic in March, coming out of spring training, but it seems to me the Royals did do enough in the offseason to find a few more victories and to get back to where they were 2 years ago, get into the mid 80s, get into the playoff hunt,
Yeah.
and make it. Do you see it that way?
I do. I've said that the Royals will probably win 85 games this year. I think that's a safe number to assume, just for them to have that mark. It was one game off of what they did in 2024 when they went to the playoffs when they won 86. I think 85 gets you in. Also, I think they had, like I said, a golden opportunity this weekend against the Braves. The Braves starting pitching is beat up. They just lost Spencer Strider today or on Monday when we record this episode. So you get past Chris Sale on Friday. Now you're talking about facing Ronaldo Lopez, possibly, and then whoever else they can cobble together to start a game. And you just saw what the Royals offense, those key stars have done early in the WBC. You get off to a good start and you can take 2 out of 3 against the Braves in Atlanta. That sets you up nice to come home and face the Minnesota Twins for another 3-game series. You could possibly be looking at a 4-2 start, maybe a 5-1 start. I mean, I think if you're a Royals fan, you take that any day, knowing how tough it's going to be to get going in the AL Central this year.
Yeah, look, and the Royals have had some rough starts in recent years. They've had to overcome slow starts, and that's always a difficult thing to do when you find yourself, 6 to 8 games under 500 by the third week in April, and you're down 5 to 6 games in the standings, and you're always swimming upstream. But I like your thinking here. If the Royals can get off to it seems like there's opportunity for the Royals to get off to a good start. Okay.
Yep.
Great conversation, as always, with Jaylon Thompson, Royals beat writer. Thank you. And when we come back, I'll share some final thoughts and tell you what's on my radar in Kansas City sports this week. The NCAA Tournament is now at the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 stage, and those will happen without a local team, except, as Sam and I mentioned, the University of Iowa includes 3 players from Kansas City high schools. Tavian Banks went to Ruskin, Bennett Sturts to Liberty, and Cam Manhowell to Staley. And of course, the Hawkeyes are coached by Ben McCollum, who won 4 Division II championships at Northwest Missouri. The Hawkeyes are playing Nebraska, a team coached by former Iowa State guard and coach Fred Hoiberg, so it's a Midwest showdown in Houston on Thursday. Now, the University of Houston will also be playing in that regional, taking on Illinois, and Illinois is led by Shawnee's Keaton Wagler. The Current and Sporting will look to rebound off of weekend losses, and the Current gets first crack at redemption. They'll take on the Seattle Reign in the Pacific Northwest on Wednesday. Sporting is off until April 4th. Well, that'll do it for this week. Thanks to our SportsBeat KC staff of Gabriella Lacey, Irvin Zhang, and Suzanne Hogan, and to our editors, Jeff Rosen and Scott Chasen. We'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City.